Much of my ready-to-run stock comes with these large tension lock couplings here. As a coupling they work very well, but they're not very prototypical obviously, and I wanted to change them for something more suitable. They work quite simply because they have a hook that hooks onto this big large bar, and off it goes. And when they buffer up, as it were, as in shunting, the two large bars touch each other and prevent buffer lock. It's a simple system and it's worked for centuries, hundreds of years. But when you want to change it, it involves a little bit of experimentation and thought. This is what I did. One solution to the coupling issue is to fit conventional couplings. These are absolutely beautiful. Now look at that. A screw coupling. It doesn't actually screw, but that doesn't matter. Two links and the bar in the middle look marvellous. But they do have one problem. They're great in the hauled mode, but you start shunting and of course they go slack, and then the wagons buffer up. Now that would be okay in the real world, but unfortunately in the real world when you scale it down to 4mm to the foot size, what happens in the real world doesn't happen the same in the model world, and we get this sort of problem. Because some of our curves on our layouts may not be as wide as they should be because of space constraints, we can end up with buffer lock. Because there's so much play in a wagon on its axle, and as they come round a tight curve, one buffer passes the other. Very few of our wagons are sprung loaded in the buffer regions, and even if they were, they might not still work as a full size one. So we have a little problem here. We've got to stop the buffers actually touching, say, because then they won't lock. We've got to keep a minimum distance between the wagons, and that's when, after much experimentation, I came up with this device. Now I'm not saying that I did invent it. As far as I'm concerned I did, but somebody else must have thought of it because it's so simple. Let's look at my coupling in more detail. First of all, I knocked up a couple of Parkside Dundas wagons to act as the prototypes, which is why they're not actually finished at the moment. Then where the hook would normally be, I've put a loop, and from that loop is a bar, which is here, like so. The bar actually pivots and is the same distance from the centre point to just the buffer shank there. You may want to make that a little bit shorter, as will become apparent later on. Each wagon or rail vehicle is fitted like this. This piece hooks in the loop on the other vehicle. The loop itself forms two purposes. One, it's the receptacle for the hook coming from the other one, and the other one is the mounting for the hook on this wagon. If you leave it dangling, it won't touch the track. It's just a little bit too short. Yet the distance there stops the buffers actually touching, and that can be shortened. You can make this fit for your particular needs, because you may have a particularly short curve or a larger one and you don't need such a long hook. When I'm coupling up, I put a piece of paper underneath. That way you don't lose sight of the hook and everything in the ballast and the sleepers. Now this is the good bit. You lift it with your shunting pole, bring your train together and just gently hook it on the hook, hook it in the loop, which either goes in first time or you're there for half an hour, but it's a hobby and you've got plenty of time, like so. Believe me, after a little while you get quite adept at it. Now then, you can see what I mean. When we're moving along here, on this hook could be slightly reduced in size, and then this is about the tightest curve I have. These buffers here, the tightest piece, could come very close to each other but still not touch. It works. Now you can paint that black, that piece of copper wire there. You can chemically stain it. You can do all sorts. I haven't got round to it yet. But there you go. Having seen this coupling arrangement in operation just now, this is how we actually make the whole assembly here. As you can see, it hooks on the beam there. But this length here of the shaft, that can be shorter if it suits your purposes, and only experimentation can prove that, in which case it will then dangle down. Even at this length it doesn't rest on the track, but if this was slightly shorter it wouldn't be a problem, and it would be unobtrusive if it was coloured black anyway. There's two parts, as we can see. There's the loop and the hook, and we're going to show you how we mould those now. I use single strand data cabling. There's multiple strands in there. A piece of that will last you absolutely years, and it's damn good stuff. Strip it down to its component strands like that, and strip off the insulation. And now we come to make the actual hook. We're going to form it around these two pins here, and these two pins are actually the offcuts from seat point motors. You could use nails, you could use thin drills, but they want to be as thin as possible to make the hole a lot smaller and the bends tighter. With a piece of wire, works better if we can hold it against the pins. And you want around 1/4 of an inch there, and just gently move that round like that. The angle isn't critical, and then when you've done that, take this and wind it tightly round the other pin and press. Don't worry about a few bends here and there, we can straighten those. Something like that. By cutting this close to the other side, we can fiddle about with it with the pliers so it joins up to form a nice tight loop. Now to make the loop, only using one post, just put the wire just past that post and turn it round. It might be easier to hold that small end and bring the other one round to meet it. Now when you lift it off, see we've got a sort of elongated U. We're going to just clip a tiny piece off of that and we're going to put the hook that we've just made onto that. There. Now we're going to close that loop up. Next, drill a hole in the buffer beam. Push the eyelet through and bend over the end, a touch of glue and jobs are good.